In this week's parsha, Parshat Bo, Hashem begins by telling Moshe, "V'yomer Adonai al Moshe, Bo el Paro ki ani ichbadati et libo v'et lev avadav." And Hashem says to Moshe, "Come to Pharaoh, because I have made his heart heavy and the heart of his servants, l'ma'an shiti ototai ele bikirbo, in order that I will place these signs in his midst." So Hashem is prefacing Pharaoh's refusal with an information to Moshe that in fact Pharaoh will not be letting the Jewish people go, that his heart is hard. Nonetheless, Hashem is sending Moshe anyway for a few reasons. First one, as we said, in order that I will place these signs. Uleman tasaper ba'ozne vincha uven vincha et asher hit'alalti b'mitzrayim. And in order that you will tell in the ears of your son and your grandson how I have hit'alalti. We're going to come back to that word with Egypt. And the signs that are placed amongst them. So number one is to place the signs with the Egyptians. Number two is to tell your son and grandson that Hashem hit olalti with Egypt. And number three, v'yadatem ki ani Adonai, and you will know that I am God. So the question, of course, is what is this word hit olalti? It's an unusual word. Hashem, part of the purpose of the plagues is to show that Hashem is hit olalti. So Rashi says it comes from the word hit alel, which means to play, to toy. Sichakti, Rashi says, I have played. So Rashi says what this really means is that I have played with Egypt. And in fact, the way Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan translates this Rashi, I have amused myself with Egypt. Now that certainly shows Hashem's control over the situation, that Hashem's power is so beyond any sort of challenge, that in the way in which we can play with toys and simply move them around and the chess pieces have no free choice to do anything other than what we say, Hashem has that same potential for control. But the question, when we were studying this together, the question that Mickey Glass asked in our Chumash Rashi group, is he says, but is this appropriate for such a serious activity? After all, the plagues involve taking life. The plagues involve destroying people. Now, my response was that, well, they certainly earned it after the way in which they had treated the Jewish people for all of these many years and the terrible slavery and suffering and affliction and murders that had happened. The Egyptians had it coming. To which he said, fine, they had it coming. But still, is it something that should be done in a cavalier fashion? Still, does it ever become a game? Does it ever become a joke or a toy? The fact that somebody deserves it, the fact that justice is being done, does not seemingly make it appropriate for it to become a joke. If somebody ever has to be sentenced very harshly because of the severity of their actions, surely that's something that Hashem also should take seriously. It's a very good question. So in fact, I found that Rav Hirsch and a number of other commentaries, such as the Alshich, take a similar approach. Is that Rav Hirsch says, well, just before I get on to Rav Hirsch, is that there are others who say, no, this word alal does not come from the word to toy or to joke or to play, but it comes from the word alilah. Alilah means a reason or an excuse. That Hashem says, hit alalti b'mitzrayim, I will be punishing the Egyptians for a reason. I have justification for what I am doing. That's a different approach, which Rashi is not happy with the grammar of that. But Rav Hirsch takes a step back and he says, yes, the word hitolel does mean to toy, but that's not the only thing that it means. Because if you take a step back, the word alal can also mean a young person, a child. So he says the word alilah means to progress and develop. Just as a child is somebody who is in a constant state of progressing and developing. If you look at a child, especially a very young child, you can actually see the learning taking place before your eyes, the development happening on a daily basis. It's really incredible. And the Kotzker Rebbe said scathingly that when people become older, he says, that they become content to imitate themselves. They become satisfied to simply be a reflection of who they were in the past. They don't feel that they need to grow further to change. So now they settled in who they are. In fact, he went so far as to compare it to a monkey. He says, just as a monkey imitates a person, many people, when they become older, imitate themselves when they were younger. So that's not how it's supposed to be. But this is, a child certainly doesn't have that. A child is growing and developing, and that's the word alil. Hit olel means to demonstrate yourself as progressing. Now, when you are just mitolel by yourself, so that's just an ongoing development within yourself. But when you're mitolel with somebody, the way he puts it is to treat somebody simply as material by which one reveals one's power by a progressive series of actions or deeds. Hence, usually when used in reference to men, treating people entirely according to your whim, having no respect for the human worth of the other party. When it comes to me, if I would be mitolel with somebody, that means I'm simply treating them as an audience. I'm simply treating them as somebody to whom I can demonstrate myself, my power, my abilities. That's what it means to toy with them. However, when used in reference to Hashem, it comes without any of those negative connotations. It means how I revealed myself, my power, my greatness in Egypt in a progressive series of deeds. What Hashem is saying over here, I'm going to be mitolel b'Mitzrayim. Not that I am going to toy with them necessarily, although the word and the root concept is the same. But I am going to progressively reveal my deeds and myself to the Egyptians. That's what the hit olel means over here. And he says with this, you can also explain what happens when Moshe leaves. Pharaoh's advisors say to him, Ad matai yezeh lanu lemokesh? Until how long will this, either this person or this matter, be a trap, a snare, mokesh? Mokesh means a trap. How long will he be a trap for us? And Rav Hirsch says, hold on a second. A trap? A trap means something unwitting. A trap means something of which you are not aware. Moshe is not doing, certainly Hashem is not doing anything here that they are not aware of. Hashem laid it down very clearly from the beginning. Hashem said, if you do not let my people go, there will be blood. There was blood. There will be frogs. There was frogs. Then there were lice. Then Hashem says, then there will be, right? Arov, Dever, Chinim. Every plague, okay, the third one of each set is the exception. We'll discuss that another time. But every plague was preceded by a warning and a very clear illustration of what would be taking place. So how can you call it a trap? How can you say this is catching you unaware? But this is the point that Rav Hirsch and the Alshich also make, is they say, but what the Egyptian advisors were beginning to realize is that there is a bigger picture going on over here. If all Hashem wanted was to demonstrate his power against the Egyptians and get them to free the Jewish people, virtually any one plague would be sufficient if it continued with sufficient intensity and duration. Plague number 1, all the water turns to blood. For how long can a country continue with the water being blood? Eventually people are going to leave. Eventually people are not going to be able to continue. Right? Even the plague of lice, which seems a little more annoying but innocuous, you're not going to live in a country of this country. Everybody's got lice. After a little while, you know that another country, they're not going to have it. After a little while, you're going to take a bath and you're going to leave. Right? Well, people aren't going to stay. Any one plague would be enough to destroy the country. The only reason it doesn't is because Hashem stops the plague. But he stops the plague, why? In order to bring the next plague. Pharaoh says, I want the plague to stop. Hashem says, fine. Hashem could have said, no. First you send the Jewish people free and then I'll stop the plague. Hashem doesn't stop the plague. Hashem continues. Hashem does stop the plague. Hashem then goes on to the next plague. It's hit olalti. I am demonstrating my work progressively over here. And that's what the advisors see over here. They say to Pharaoh, don't you see it's a trap? It's not a trap in that we're unaware of what's happening, but it's a trap in that Hashem is playing you. It's that Hashem knows what's going to happen next. Hashem knows that you're going to say no and you're not going to let the Jewish people go, so he'll bring the next plague. That's how it's structured. Don't you see that the real victor throughout all of this is Hashem? The one who's really achieving what they want is Hashem, who will both demonstrate his power and then set the Jewish people free. Back out of the game. Just leave it. Just set the Jewish people free. Say, Hashem, you've won. Because surviving the next plague is not going to get us through. It's Hashem who's in charge. That's the mokesh. That's the trap. The trap is thinking that each plague is the plague. The whole set is the plague. The point is the demonstration. The point is not to drive the Jewish people out straight away, but to demonstrate the power of Hashem, both to the Egyptians, that they will understand the severity of what they've done, and to the Jewish people to plant within us a faith and a relationship with God that has lasted well over 3,000 years. Have a wonderful Shabbat.